Good morning. It is 9:01 on Wednesday, October 8th, and I would like to call this meeting to order. I'll ask the secretary to please call roll.
This is Angie Castellanos for the record, and this is roll call. President Dockweiler,
Here.
Vice President Hughes,
Here.
Superintendent Canavero,
Present.
Member Hudson,
Present.
Member Braxton, Member Dawson Owens,
Present.
Member Els,
Here.
Member Ford,
Present.
Member Lane,
Present.
Member Orr,
Present.
and Member Neo.
Present.
Madam President, you have quorum.
Thank you, Angie. I would like to note for the record that we are also joined by Deputy Attorney General Greg Cloward. We would like to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples whose traditional homeland where we are presenting from and where people are joining us from, and that is now the state of Nevada. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Does Angela have a dog with her?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't be with you today because workers came to my house and so I needed to bring my dog to work. So if you could all adopt a dog-friendly policy, that would be great. And I'll never miss it.
We're happy to have you, Member Orr, and your little puppers. I will now open the first public comment period under agenda item 2. I'd like to remind everyone that comments should be limited to items on the agenda. Please ensure you fill out a comment card, turn the microphone on, and state your name for the record. Additionally, please note that items categorized as future agenda item requests are not part of this public comment period. I will also limit each speaker to 3 minutes, and time will be monitored by Vice President Hughes. I will begin with any members of the public who have attended to provide comments in person. Are there any comments in Carson City?
Madam Chair, there are no public comments in Carson City at this time.
Thank you. And in Las Vegas, we have one public comment. We have Ed Gonzalez. Please come forward and begin when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the State Board of Education, Superintendent Canavero. For the record, my name is Ed Gonzalez. I'm speaking on agenda item 8. I think it's important that this board develop a legislative engagement. I think what we've seen in the last few legislative sessions is the legislature taking action on bills without having any discussions with the state board. And there are times where you have actually done the work, done a regulation, watched the legislative commission approve the regulation, only to watch the state legislature undo the work they just approved without having any type of conversation with you. As you go into the community stuff, there's really not a lot of knowledge of what the state board does, just because they don't understand. I guess it's it's a lesson in civics, where it's like we should change something different. We should rush to the legislature. It's like sometimes you're actually looking for clarification of the law, which would be more appropriate from regulations. And then the question ends up informing people like, where would you go for a regulation? How does that process work? So I think it's really important for you guys to develop some sort of legislative agenda. Also, too, when there's issues that come toward the legislature that you may want to take action on, that you can, like any other government body. And then obviously, too, I think a little bit of concern I have is that many agencies also have the ability to do a BDR. I know the Commission on School Funding recently had a BDR given to them in statute. The state board doesn't have anything like that. As far as I know, you guys don't really have much of any funding. So it makes it really difficult for a board who is partially elected, it's a hybrid board, to be able to say, here's the concerns that we have from our constituents, when you don't have access to a lot of those situations and sometimes not even in the conversation. I think to me, it's been the most frustrating thing the last few years. And only we saw it recently because of some active engagement by some board members, which is, well, what does your regulator think on this issue? What does the state board, what kind of information have you gone to them? That's only recently happened because of a push by people. And so as you continue having this conversation, I do think it's really important for you to be able to have some agendas legislative agenda, because there's issues that you see as you're crafting regulations and looking at issues you've been tasked for that not anybody else has, and you're probably the only people who can truly advocate for that. So thank you, Madam President, for letting me have the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Seeing no other public comments in person for this public comment period, has the secretary received any written comments for public comment at this time?
We have no public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 3, approval of flexible agenda. May I have a motion to approve the use of a flexible agenda, allowing me to take items out of order if necessary?
We should know.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to agenda item 4, we have the president's report, and we have a few updates to share with the public, which are very exciting. First, we would like to thank Member Walker for his service on this board. He was a great leader and provided great perspective and always had a considerate view in which the board should consider information. And with the turnover here, we would also then like to announce our new board member, Susan Neal. Member Neal is a board member for the Elko County School District. And it would be wonderful, Member Neal, if you could hop on and share a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the board and to the public.
Good morning, everyone. A little bit about myself. I grew up in South Dakota, but I've been in Elko County now most of my life. I have a degree in elementary education and a master's degree in educational technology. I first started teaching in Wendover and then later transferred to Elko. And after 16 years working as an elementary teacher, I started as a staff development special for Elko County and worked with teachers as well as online high school students. And I retired from the school district after 28 years. And as previously stated, I serve on the Elko County School Board now. I have worked with the state, so I worked with a program called E for E, which provided online courses to any Nevada teacher. I also served as a professional development strategist for the Nevada Ready 21 grant. And I am a volunteer for CASA, which is a court-appointed special advocates. I work with Nevada Side, which is a state tech group, and I'm a member of the Elko County Reading Council. And it's an honor to serve on this board, and I look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Neal, and welcome. We're excited to have your service on this board with us. Another update, as this board is aware and all the hard work that this board went through with the partnership of the governor's office to announce that Dr. Victor Wakefield has been selected as the incoming superintendent, and his first day will be October 27th. So we welcome his arrival. And with his arrival, there will be the departure of our current interim superintendent, Dr. Canavero. And I would just like to extend a heartfelt thank you for the work that you've done and the leadership that you've provided to this board, not once, but twice over your extenuating career. So thank you so much for all of your leadership and guidance to this board in this interim capacity. And Dr. Canavero, do you have any words for the board or words of wisdom that you'd like us to carry forward?
Yeah, I'm always short on words of wisdom, but just Member Neal, welcome to the board. It's a fantastic, curious, inquisitive, thoughtful group of professionals to help lead the state. So you're in good company, and just appreciate being able to jump in and help and support. And yeah, I'll just reserve my other comments for my update. But I'll just mention your process was thorough, rigorous. Many of the department staff were able to watch and commented on how thorough and how rigorous your process to vet the candidates was. And I think you're in incredibly good hands with Superintendent Wakefield. And I've been in conversation with him and certainly hope to leave him with all sorts of plans and information so that he can pick up and continue to move the urgent work urgently and engage with you all on the long-term work as well. So thank you all for being welcoming to me. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Superintendent Canavero. With that, I will turn to my board members. Are there any board member updates that you'd like to share? Member Hughes.
Thank you, President Ockwellis. Member Hughes, for the record, I had two quick updates. The first is I wanted to give an update on the instructional materials working group. I've been working with Lisa and a bunch of folks across districts, and we are coming together this Friday for our next meeting. And we're continuing the conversation about ways we may upgrade our own process here in Nevada to make sure it's more rigorous and make sure that all kids have high quality materials in front of them. What we are doing this Friday is we are interrogating our own current system and approach, and we're looking at 3 states that have had some success with this and doing a little comparing and contrasting to hopefully identify what are the strengths of our current system that we want to keep and what are some opportunities to update or sort of adjust our process moving forward, which hopefully over the next few months will lead to some recommendations that then we'll sort of be able to start implementing. So that's the first update. The second update is around the Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education. So I'd mentioned last time the next phase of that is really focused on a subcommittee around metrics. So as part of, I believe it was 460 in this last session, there's a push to change some of our accountability systems. So that group is going to be looking at the school performance framework and other associated metrics. Obviously, the state board plays a key role in some of those decisions, and so I'm hoping to be able to liaise between that group and the state board to make sure that your input is fully represented as this group starts to rethink what our next iteration of our performance framework should look like. So more to come there, but that is sort of officially kicking off in that second phase.
Amazing. Thank you, Vice President Hughes, for the update and for all the critical work, and appreciate you representing our voice in these different spaces. Member Orr, do you have an update to share?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to thank the department. They worked very hard to put on family engagement seminars and bring in the community both in Las Vegas and in Carson. And I felt just really honored to be invited to deliver some opening remarks up here in Carson for that event. And I really appreciate that it's been a long time since that was an in-person event. I know it's a lot of work to put those on, and I think it's really incredibly important that we're always interfacing with families, even at the state level. So just wanted to thank the department for that. And then I wanted to give an update that the at-risk funding committee will be meeting next Tuesday in our ongoing work with the department to try to figure out alternative measures for at-risk funding. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Member Orr. Any other updates from board members? Okay. Seeing none, we will move on to agenda item 5 with the interim superintendent's report and Dr. Canavero.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. Steve Canavero, your interim state superintendent. Just provide you a few updates, and then with some balance of time, should you have any questions. It's been a bit since we met, and I wanted to update you on, well, the reason why we didn't meet in September was the cyber incident that the state experienced. And I can say today that I think from the user or the client aspect, as they engage with the state's systems, it's likely that you're seeing limited to no interruption in the work. So the recovery, I think, as it's experienced by our districts as they interact or others as they interact with our website, et cetera, is fairly consistent and back, if you will, to where we were prior to the incident. I would just mention that no small feat of the governor's office for technology, our own internal NDE technology team, to make that so. So there's still work that we're doing on the backside, sort of the invisible side of all of our servers to ensure that that we're fully back up and running, but we're operational and recovered. So tremendous lift. I have no idea really what it took. I just knew that people were here throughout those weeks, all day and into the evening, trying to ensure that when things would come back online, they would come back online safely, and that we could do so smoothly. So the next item just wanted to mention is the federal shutdown. As you know, the federal government is shut down, and they failed to pass a budget or a resolution to keep the government open, and the impact that might have or may have upon Nevada, and particularly the Department of Education. There just so happens that we have also a state planned transition for really we just entered it October 6th. For 2 weeks, the state has been long planning a transition in basically our accounting and payroll software system. We had been working with districts and working with grantees to bill us urgently ahead of this 2-week period of time that we just entered into for the state's transition, to ensure that we could provide and process those requests for reimbursements ahead of this 2-week period where we knew we couldn't process any requests for reimbursements, again, planned by the state. And due to the collaboration and hard work of our districts and our grantees and the team at the department, who spent quite a bit of time in the evening processing these requests ahead of this transition period, we feel like that sort of serendipity that it positioned us very well for a quiet period with the shutdown. The good news so the advanced planning ahead of the 2-week transition for the state coincided with the federal shutdown and limits the challenge, if you will, related to or any challenge that we might experience with the federal shutdown. The good news is we, well in advance of the government shutdown, but leading right up until October 1st, we received our formal notices of our grant awards from the federal government, Title I, for example, IDEA, et cetera. And so we knew that we had those funds were allocated. And we also are able, during the shutdown, the federal shutdown, we are able to request draws from the federal government for those federal programs to the state. So right now, depending upon how long the shutdown goes for, would change this perspective. But currently, we're in a good position, and we anticipate limited to no real disruptions if the shutdown is 2 to 3 weeks. If it goes longer, of course, we may need to revisit that. But having the ability, even if it's slightly delayed because there's not as many staff working at the federal level as there would be typically, so any delays that we might experience with those drawdowns, but being able to access our federal funds and draw them to the state is important. And I appreciated the support from the board, and I do just want to mention that it's I served in an interim capacity. We had a number of changes to staffing and some in leadership during this transition period, and that required a number of folks at the department to step up. But really and truly, an individual who deserves a tremendous amount of credit and recognition by the board is the interim deputy superintendent, Lisa Ford. She has done a tremendous job filling many different roles in the agency, And my gratitude to Lisa personally and professionally for her support during this period. And I would imagine she's very excited for the Superintendent Wakefield to be seated and begin to fill the positions, especially leadership positions, that so she can really just have one job. That'd be great. I think that should be Lisa's goal, and hopefully one that the new superintendent can accomplish rather quickly. Pivoting to the NSPF results, as you all are aware, we released September 15th, but under the new timelines for the post-legislative session, that will be advanced to August 15th. But September 15th every year, we release the star ratings and the report card across the state. So the Nevada School Performance Framework. We did that in 2 phases this year. The first phase, again, because of the cyber attack and the access to all of our systems, we were able to push out the star ratings on time. And then we followed that up in the second phase with the report card release, both of which had press releases with them. But I hope for you, the couple of headlines that I hope you see in the data, and perhaps for those of you and for Member Neal and Elko and Member else for your district, more specifically for your districts, but across the state, I don't think there's anybody who would not acknowledge that we have work to do and that we have a tremendous hill to climb as a state. However, the results from this most recent release, I have not seen in my time, both prior serving as the state superintendent or paying attention during the last 6 years, have had such across the board gains in all of our grade levels. So we're seeing increases in English language arts and mathematics in the elementary school, 3 through 8. We're seeing increases in achievement in science. We're seeing increases in achievement in the ACT. And we're seeing higher graduation rates, lower chronic absenteeism rates. And I think, as I had mentioned in the press release, this is new terrain for me to see this type of momentum. And I think it signals hopefully this type of momentum will continue over the next few years. So we have work to do, but tremendous growth across grade levels, across grade bands, and across demographics. Moving to the legislative implementation update, there is so much here to discuss, but I do want to spend just 1 minute talking about the department's orientation. When I first arrived as your interim superintendent, I was asked a number of times about the efficiency assessment. It's probably the one thing that was most remarked or requested from me during the first month or first few weeks. And we had discussions about it, had discussions with NAS about that. And I hope that you see in our legislative implementation a real desire to engage and collaborate with our districts and to communicate across. And part of that commitment is reflected in what we're using as a means to enhance the communication and provide channels for collaboration with stakeholders in our guidance memorandum that we produce. I think we have 10 now posted on our website. They range from the first early around school calendar requirements all the way through to the 10th, which is the most recent related to Assembly Bill 533 and the open enrollment requirements and the work that we're doing for open enrollment. This is our work moving forward, is continue to collaborate and communicate. We're using the guidance memorandum as a foundation in order to do that. And you'll see in each of the guidance memorandum, maybe all, I might miss 1 or 2, but an invitation to join in work stakeholder groups, work groups, et cetera, throughout. So a couple of high points or just touch points that I'll have. Member Hughes, Vice President Hughes mentioned the district performance framework, sort of an urgent effort that needs to be stood up in this interim, in this first year of the interim, and the group who will provide sort of the initial, if you will, hub organization for the development of that. We are actively recruiting members for that, including Vice President Hughes will serve on that group. Members of the CIEE Metrics Subcommittee will serve on that group. And we're broadening out, so educators, principal, teacher, trustees, we're inviting trustees to serve on that group, given the district performance framework, and the trustees, superintendents on that group as well. Key to keep the conversation moving. I think we have meetings scheduled monthly from November through July in order to produce that work and to make some adjustments to the NSPF. Another area that I'll just highlight is the all of the early literacy work. And this is an area as well that Deputy Superintendent Ford is deeply engaged in. The science of reading, the STEM literacy pilot. These are deeply collaborative efforts, and give credit to the department teams, credit to the regional professional development training programs who are at the table, our districts who are at the table. I think we're listening, and we're trying to design a statewide science of reading professional development opportunities that both build upon what districts are currently doing, and then also leverage the capacity of the RPDPs to dig in deep for districts who wish to have a deeper engagement with them. As well as the STEM literacy pilot, we currently have I think a task force that has been designed, again, in order to roll this out, not just as a one-off, but as an integrated part of our effort to improve literacy across the state. I mentioned the open enrollment, and the other, I'd say, key feature too that's going to be heard very soon, especially with COPS and the Teachers and Leading Council, is the Nevada Educator Performance Framework updates, the Performance Improvement Plan. All of this work is urgent and important, and we're doing our level best to engage the field, our districts and our stakeholders as we begin to design, develop solutions and an approach to being both compliant, but also integrate this work into a whole, a body of work across the state. Soon you'll see regulatory meetings. So I think COPS has already started. I will begin holding workshops October 20th. There's a posting now for an October 20th regulatory meeting. So we're beginning what I'm calling the winter of regulations. A lot of regulatory work that needs to be done in order to implement and to clarify the legislative implementation in the biennium. And so that you will see quite a bit of work there. Of course, you will see regulations that are the state board's regulations for the hearings. As you know, and for Member Neal, the department can host workshops for regulations across the board, whether they're the superintendents, the departments, or the state boards, in order to then get the feedback, develop language, but then ultimately the hearing, the formal adoption then has to be held by the superintendent, the department, or the state board as it's identified in law. So you will start to see those regulations in late winter, early spring as the hearings come through. So with that, I'll just, the last thing I'll just mention is we are working on a legislative implementation update. So it sort of builds on the guidance memorandum. We've committed to making quarterly updates. This will be our sort of Q2 update. And that will be posted soon, and would encourage the board to review that as it's full of detail about very particular, but also broadly across our key legislative implementation aspects. So sorry, with that, I will pause, and if there are any questions, happy to address them.
Any questions from board members? Member Ford, go ahead.
Thank you. I just missed how that the members for that committee for the NSPF were selected, and I'd like to express my interest in being involved in that.
Thank you, Member Ford. Steve Canavero. The formal name of this group, this working group, is the Metrics Subcommittee for Accountability Design. It is a public body, or a public meeting. The meetings will be public, so anybody can attend, anybody can be a part of it. In particular, our partnership with the Center for Assessment, who is an entity who supports states doing this across the nation. We have sort of a representative list, and on sort of filling the state board and connecting it to the CIEE's ongoing work is Vice President Hughes. So as a representative of the state board on that body. However, again, the meetings are open. They will stream. So by all means, utilize that as an avenue, but also please utilize your position on the state board and Vice President Hughes as an avenue to weigh in on the design of the district performance framework.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, well, we greatly appreciate that in-depth update. Superintendent Canavero, thank you. Now we will move on to agenda item 6. I trust a consent agenda. I trust that our board members have had ample opportunity to review the consent agenda and the support materials. As a reminder, board members are asked to review all materials and request clarification in writing prior to the meeting. Any board member may pull an item for discussion, or we can approve them with a single motion. Would any members like to pull an item for discussion? And if not, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This member Hughes, I just had a quick request about one of the items, the class size reduction variance report.
Okay, proceed.
So one just a request. So again, we've brought up questions about this in the past and had some conversation, so I don't think that's worth rehashing. But one thought I was having as I was looking through this is I'm not sure, I know a lot of people I'm sure are involved in putting this report together. And it is helpful to see, but I know I'm assuming the intent of this report was around like, let's look at data, let's look at trends over time, and then be able to act if needed to try to help get to the initial goal of sort of reasonable class sizes. And so I am wondering, there was a little bit of comparison that was in sort of the introduction of the report, but I'm wondering if in the future, could we do a more direct year-over-year comparison? I think the comparison we looked at was statewide, but I think it would be helpful to actually look more granularly district by district. So again, we can look for trends, look for bright spots to learn from, and then look for if there's, sort of issues over time. I think right now board members have to sort of pull up each previous quarter to do that kind of analysis. So just a request, I don't know if that's possible, if we could just do a little bit more comparative analysis for the next reports as these come out.
Interim Deputy Superintendent Lisa Ford for the record. We can discuss that in with the leadership team as we look at refining that report, because there are some very specific things that we are required to do under statute. So yeah, I can bring that up to the team.
Steve Canberra, thank you, Vice President Hughes. I just grabbed Megan, pulled her out of a meeting, Deputy Superintendent Peterson. It does sound like it's resolved, though. It sounds like that's something that we could look into. I don't know if you have anything specific, though, that you want to ask of the Deputy Superintendent.
No, nothing specific. I think just, the request would just be if we could do a little bit more of like district year-over-year comparison. I think the main comparison that I saw was sort of state year-over-year of sort of like the overall increases or decreases from the previous quarter, or the previous quarter of that same or previous year. But again, it would just be helpful, I think, for us to be able to understand trends a little bit better. And I feel like we look at each quarter in isolation. And I don't know that we're able to like do much about that.
This is Megan Peterson for the record. Yes, any feedback that the board would like to give us on how they would like to see those reports, we can absolutely incorporate that and provide that information. So as I understand it, a district level comparison year over year of the trends as they're occurring within the reporting.
Yes, that would be great, and appreciate the flexibility there. I know a lot of work goes into putting this report together every quarter.
Yes, we can definitely do that.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent Peterson. Well, also just to clarify what Member Hughes said, but also keeping the state level comparisons as well.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful, thank you. Okay, any further discussion? If not, I will accept a motion to approve.
Member Hudson, I motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item 7. Our next item is for information, discussion, and possible action on the approval of instructional materials to support career and technical education programs statewide. These textbooks have been reviewed by the Department's Office of Career Readiness, Adult Learning, and Education Options. They cover multiple pathways, including biomedical science, accounting and finance, health science, industrial maintenance, culinary arts, and teaching and training. At this time, I'll invite Anna Reynolds, Director of the Office of Career Readiness, Adult Learning, and Education Options, to present the department's recommendations. Thank you for being with us today, and please proceed when you are ready.
All right. Good morning. My name is Anna Reynolds, and I'm the Director of the Office of Career Readiness, Adult Learning, and Education Options for the record. This morning, I'll be providing information regarding the adoption process utilized in career and technical education for textbook adoption. Throughout this presentation, career and technical education will be further referred to as CTE. The process begins in the school district, as the district is responsible for convening the review committee according to NAC 389.854. This committee plays a critical role as it's responsible for evaluating and recommending all textbooks and electronic media for use in our schools. The requirements for this committee are clearly laid out in NAC 389.854. As you can see on this slide, this process begins with the superintendent of each school district, who is responsible for appointing the committee members. The composition of this committee is very specific to ensure a balanced and informed perspective. First, it must include licensed teachers. The type of teacher depends on the grade level of the material being considered, and subject-specific teachers for secondary grades and elementary education teachers for elementary grades. Next, we must have a school district administrator or a curriculum specialist on the committee. This member provides insight into the district's overall educational goals and curriculum alignment. A crucial component is the inclusion of a parent whose child is enrolled in the district. This ensures that the perspective of the community and families is represented in the decision-making process. And finally, the superintendent has the discretion to appoint any other members that they feel are necessary to ensure a comprehensive review, adding flexibility to the process. Once the committee completes its work, its recommendations are then sent to the State Board of Education for final adoption. This slide outlines the key responsibilities of the Textbook Review Committee. As established by NAC 389.854, the committee is tasked with reviewing textbooks and providing the formal evaluation. The review committee then conducts its evaluation of textbooks utilizing the forms provided by the Department of Education that are aligned to NAC 389.856. And the evaluation criteria listed on this slide is the criteria that's presented in NAC 389.856. The committee then submits any recommendations for a new textbook or electronic media to the Department of Education, along with all review committee materials. The department then reviews the submission before it is considered by the State Board of Education for final approval. The department confirms that the district has submitted all necessary materials, which includes a list of committee members, completed rubrics, and a copy of each textbook for review. Then the department confirms that the textbook is aligned to the standards for CTE. The Department of Education has the authority to delay the consideration of any recommendation if they find that the information provided is incorrect or inaccurate. This becomes a significant consequence because the delay can impact the student's access to new or updated materials. And if a material is not provided, it just extends the time that it takes for us to review them. Upon completion of the review by the District Textbook Committee and the Department of Education, the list of instructional materials and supporting documents are then placed on the State Board agenda for approval by the State Board. The textbooks on today's agenda were submitted by the Clark County School District for adoption. However, any district may submit a textbook for adoption using the process that I've just described, and this may occur at any time a district needs a new textbook for CTE. There's 53 available CTE programs in Nevada that districts may choose to implement at a school. So when a district chooses to implement a new CTE program, they may wish to pursue a textbook adoption to choose the materials that best meet the needs of their district. They are also welcome to select from the list of previously approved texts. The materials for review provided by the Clark County School District followed the processes discussed in this presentation and utilize the appropriate forms specified by the Department of Education for CTE. Would you all like to see any of the forms that are utilized?
We have had opportunity to review those, so there's no need to pull them up. Thank you.
Perfect. And I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you to your department and to the committee. That's a substantive list, and appreciate all the work and effort that went into that. Any board members have questions, comments? Member Braxton.
So that would have been up to the district to determine who reviews each piece. However, the district on their forms, they submitted the list of reviewers for each textbook. And if you'd like us to compile that information of how many different things reviewed, we could go through the forms that they submitted and determine that.
Madam President, just Steve Cambro, Carson City weighing in. We heard the answer and we think we know the question that was asked, but we did not hear the question. Maybe the microphone was off, or if you wouldn't mind repeating the question. And we have a question here as well when the time comes.
Yes, thank you.
What about this one? Oh, yes. Okay, so my microphone is working, of course. So Member Braxton, for the record, my question was, of the appointed individuals, how many curriculum was each appointee assigned to review? Would anyone else like to weigh in on that? Because the answer to my understanding is that there were a list of appointees that were able to review curriculum. And looking at the sheets, there's a score sheet, if you will, provided in the materials. It's interesting. You know, I guess I would also like to know what is the look and feel of these textbooks, right? Are they paper textbooks? Is it online? How is it delivered for students?
There was some of each. There were some that were paper copies that were submitted to us at the department, and there were others that were online logins. So the districts have the flexibility in this process to determine which book suits their needs to begin with. They review the book and then they submit it to us for adoption, as opposed to us selecting a variety of books for them to look at. They make their own choices and they submit. They provided us with rubrics for a whole list of textbooks. There were ones that they did not choose to put forward for adoption, and we have that list as well. The ones that are on your list today are the ones that the district chose to pursue.
Thank you for that. And I am excited to see that there is a number of curricula available for career and technical education. Preparing our students for the jobs of tomorrow are everything. So thank you for this formal process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Braxton. Carson City, your hand is still raised. Do you have a question or comment you'd like to make? Okay.
Yes, thank you. This is Member Land for the record. I just wanted to clarify, how were stakeholders involved in the selection of these curricula? Like, was it educators who helped review the curriculum that was presented here, or?
Hi, Anna Reynolds for the record. If you give me a moment, I can share and I can show you an example of the forms that demonstrate what the district has to fill out, and I think that'll best answer your question. Okay, so what they submit for each textbook, here's an example of one of them, and the forms are similar for all of them. They submitted the score sheets to us in another location, but here what we have on this particular form, it tells us, okay, here's the district. This is the date that the committee selected the text. Okay, that was on March 13th. Then we go down a bit. And it tells us these were the people that were on this review committee. So for this particular book, we had this one that was the health science teacher, we had an administrator, and we had a parent. Okay, so we had all three of the required members for the committee. So then Perfect. We go down and they have their community events where stakeholders and community members are allowed to provide input on all of the textbook. This is their opportunity to review the materials out in the community. And the dates and times are listed here of when and where the district conducted their community review. We go down further and they certify, and if there's any exceptions, like here, this one, they only had a student edition. This one, there was something that wasn't listed in the book, and they respond to all of the items that they had inadequate that were on their rubrics. If we go down a bit further, this is the rubric that each person filled out. So this is an example, and this person said, this one meets, this one's meets. This one didn't have a specific teacher edition, so they put NA. And so this is how they go through and evaluate the materials. And this is provided for each textbook that the Clark County School District selected for adoption. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers it perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have Vice President Hughes.
This is Member Hughes. I had one quick question and then just two comments to make. The quick question is, I feel like when we had this conversation about content areas, we were told we could not know who was on the committee, that there were some like protections that had to be anonymous, but I don't know if that is different for CTE, or maybe that's not a rule anymore, or maybe we misunderstood last time. If somebody could clarify sort of what membership is allowed to be known or not.
Lisa Ford for the record. So under the system that we're revisiting currently with the task force, that's done through an RFQ process, and that's run with purchasing. So we have to follow the purchasing rules. This particular review is done strictly through the components that are listed in NAC, and requires that the districts demonstrate who participated on the committee so that we can assure in our review of all of their materials that they have followed the NAC and had the required people on that team.
Got it. Thank you. That is helpful. And then the two comments just to put out there and for the board to know, speaking of this working group, so two of the things that we are trying to address or will be included in sort of the suite of things we look at. One is we do currently have a different process for CTE versus core content areas. And so in core content areas, the state initiates the process and then goes through their review and then submits the list. And then districts can choose from that list. And often then districts will do an additional evaluation as they're sort of deciding. On CTE, as you just heard, it sort of flipped. And so one of the things we're looking at is, what are the benefits of a consistent system across the board, knowing that different states have tried different things. Sometimes it is state driven, sometimes it's district driven, but does become confusing if we're running two different processes. The second thing to Member Braxton's question, one of the other things we're looking at is, there's a much broader suite of tools and resources now that publishers are saying are part of their curriculum. And we are not always evaluating all of that full suite. And so what has happened historically over the last many years is there are some things that should have gotten a high score in our evaluation system, but we may not have looked at supplemental materials in the same way. We may not have looked at electronic resources. And so some publishers are putting some of their content in those formats. And so our current process doesn't account for all of those things. So people may or may not be getting credit in the scores based on the slice of materials we may be looking at. And so that's another thing this working group is hoping to consider is how do we make sure we're consistent and can be consistent and let publishers know that, here's what we are looking at, here's what we're not looking at, so that they know that we're sort of fully evaluating their products.
Great comments, Vice President Hughes. Thank you for that perspective. Any other questions or comments from board members? Okay, with that, may I call for a motion to approve these materials?
Member Hudson, motion to approve the materials listed on item 7.
Member Dawson Owens, I second that.
Okay, we've had a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. We will move on to agenda item 8. Thank you, Director Reynolds, for the presentation. We appreciate your time. So agenda item 8, we'll discuss our policy agenda. So back in July, this board had voted to establish a policy agenda leading up to and during the next legislative session in 2027. Seems really far away. So the work begins today. So there's some action that we can take today, some considerations for this board to start thinking about. For example, establishing a subcommittee, assigning members or who would like to serve on that subcommittee, possible topics that we would like to begin including in that agenda, and then also defining the charge and time frame that the subcommittee could be functioning under. So once formed, the subcommittee will focus on issues within the board's authority in alignment with our strategic goals and identify opportunities for collaboration with the department and other partners as the legislative work would move forward. As with many of our other subcommittees, this particular subcommittee, if we choose to move forward, would report back to the full board with recommendations for potential priorities to include in a policy agenda for the upcoming legislative session. So with that, any thoughts, ideas from the board, questions or comments? Member Braxton.
Member Braxton, for the record. Well, first off, I'm excited that we are having this conversation. I think it's definitely an important one when we consider a number of things. I've often discussed how there is seeming confusion in community about the state board and what the state board does. We've had a public comment regarding the fact that people aren't fully aware of what the state board does. And when we say people, who are we talking about? We're talking about parents, we're talking about fellow educators, and we're definitely talking about perhaps our legislature. And so, if I go to an event and I'm mistakenly called a regent, well, why is that, right? This is not about titles, but it is about confusion, gross confusion. When we look at the titles of our departments, Nevada Department of Education, State Board of Education, and we have our school boards. When we look at legislation and how that is interpreted and what needs to take place to implement these policies, there needs to be a clear understanding by those people who legislation affects that there is a state board with specific responsibilities. My second point is if there is an opportunity to be represented in a room where you are discussed, then that's also important. I personally don't care for being discussed in a room where I'm not, in attendance. And so this is what I think this discussion can lead to, right? How are we to engage with the legislature? We don't have funding, for example, to fly up to the legislature constantly, right? But what would it look like if we did? And I think if we look at opportunities for improvement, we should look at what is it that we want, right? What are these outcomes that we're looking for? And then work backward from there. So with the creation of a subcommittee, these type of things can be addressed.
Excellent points. Thank you, Member Braxton. Anybody else want to weigh in? Carson City, go ahead.
This is Member Ellis for the record. I want to echo Member Braxton's comments, but also I wanted to express how truly important I think that this is. I preach that we need to be collaborative all of the time, and I think that this will give an opportunity for the State Board of Education to have a voice where we can work, the state board, school districts, school boards, the Department of Education and legislature can work together in unison towards maybe a few things that are going to be really, really good for education, instead of coming up with many, many, many things that are not necessarily the best things or the best bang for our buck that we're going to get for our students.
Appreciate that. Alignment and unity. I heard. Very good. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Member Hudson.
Member Hudson, for the record, I agree with what everyone had also said, but just to reiterate, I think this is a great opportunity to also align our advocacy efforts along with strengthening our relationships with lawmakers. And this is just a way for us to just turn our values into actions, especially when it comes to making decisions for education, especially like to say that we don't have, I'm an educator and I have a voice, but don't really have an impact when it comes to some decisions that should be made. So this is a great opportunity to also protect our ability to make sure that we make informed student-centered decisions as well.
Thank you. Member Dawson Owens.
Yes, Member Dawson Owens, for the record, I agree that this is really important. I know other state boards of education do this. They have their legislative priority agenda for each session that also can include budgetary asks that then translates into legislation that passes related to items in our purview, of course. Since we're often implementing these anyways, I think that's a good cross collaboration that has been mentioned across the community and with advocates.
All right, thank you. Member Ford.
Thank you. I have similar thought processes that have been shared, but I guess I just wanted to see if there was already an idea of how this would look and if there's like some sort of methodology that's already being shaped. I think that this is stemming from some actual situations that we were unhappy with during the legislative session. For instance, hearing the state board being referred to without having a specific invite or being included in that conversation. also, a lot of times it's very unclear as to who is supposed to be doing something when the legislators are saying the Department of Education often, and then sometimes they're saying the state board. And then it becomes like, are we just oversight, or are we supposed to be actually working on that thing and implementing it? So I think this is a really good idea, but I'd like to maybe discuss what that would look like in practice. Like, yes, should we do the committee first of all, and then what is the end result of it? Like, what does this look like when it's formed? Is that a one sheet or a report that we then take to the legislative session in 2027? Or is that some sort of maybe like active group that's maybe always meeting with stakeholders and the electeds along the way, so that we are making sure that they're informed ahead of time? Like, what should it be? And then also, I just wanted to clarify how this will relate or work with the NRS 388G subcommittee that is definitely going to overlap with some of that as it applies to SB 460.
Thank you, Member Ford. All excellent questions. And this is new. The state board has never had a policy agenda. So all of those questions and ideas that you brought up can all be explored and defined, because nothing has been put in place yet. So we can look at the level of engagement that the subcommittee and the board will have. We can look at all the different components of what the deliverables might be. And so I open that up also as part of this discussion, because it will be the charge of the subcommittee to what we want that to look like. So if anyone has any ideas, please jump in.
Well, let me ask this question, Member Braxton, for the record. Let me ask this question. So would we first motion to approve that there would be a subcommittee, and then would the subcommittee define how it will engage? And back to Member Ford's question, the methodology, the framework behind it, what would this subcommittee look like?
Yes. So anything that the subcommittee would be working on would have to come back to the full board for approval. So anything the subcommittee puts together would be a recommendation for the board to consider and then pass, similar to our other subcommittees. And we can certainly do this in whatever order we want. We can make a motion to move forward with a subcommittee and then discuss what that might entail, or we can just have a general conversation and then move forward with the vote. Member Ford?
I think that we should move to definitely do it. I like the, okay, so I kind of see how it could work, but I don't want to just like give my plan, because every time I try to do that, it seems like overstepping. But I really think we should just like set a calendar first and be like, we're going to meet quarterly or whatever, and here's the people that we're going to invite. It's going to be transparent. It's going to be a public meeting. And then make sure that we are inviting the people that are on specifically the education subcommittees, or the people who have historically been the ones who sponsor certain bills that change the way that the laws around education works. So I think that first, like determining a practical calendar, and then the scope of what we're going to deliver, which I think should be a policy, like my brain's all over the place. A stance, like our stances of what we want to change. But the goal would be to not be blindsided, because we have kept these relationships open with stakeholders who want to be involved, like principals, parents, all these people, as well as the people making the laws around it. So the goal, in my opinion, would be to not have a repeat of last session. And if it does repeat and we find out we weren't invited to this thing, why are they making laws that affect us? It's like, we did our part. We kept that line of communication open. We were transparent. We were public about it. So hopefully, that doesn't happen again, and we can actually work together on this policy. But it's kind of like being accountable to do our job. So I think that motioning to form the committee, saying the purpose is going to be to have those relationships along the way and prevent any type of adversarial instances happening during the session, while making our stances on policy as it comes in very clear into a like one sheet or, you know, whatever we're going to call that, I think is kind of what we should decide it's going to be. And if somebody wants to say that better than me, go ahead.
Thank you, Member Ford. I was taking notes, so let me circle back with what I heard. So the potential charge of the subcommittee could be to, of course, establish or make recommendations relative to the content, to establish a regular meeting schedule or calendar, determine the level of engagement of the board in promoting the legislative agenda, and then also the scope of deliverables or outcomes that we hope to see. Okay, beautiful. Vice President Hughes.
Vice President Hughes, for the record. So we'll just ditto everything that's been said. The three sort of suggestions or recommendations I would have for whoever is interested in the subcommittee is one, I do think will be more influential if we're able to coordinate with other entities, particularly NDE, because if everybody ends up with their own separate policy agenda, it's going to dilute everybody's. And so I do think that will be important. And there's an opportunity with the new state superintendent coming in, who I'm assuming will want to interrogate the STIP and will want to set priorities for the department. And so being able to do that in lockstep, sure, there may be some disagreements. We should hash those out. But I do think that will hold more weight as we want to do this. The second is I would just want us to clarify what we're solving for. I think sometimes it's easy to like start with the laundry list of here's all the things, but to get very clear on what we want to focus our energy on before we get too into the weeds on the like how we're going to do that. And the third is we should just be thinking about flexibility. So it's great that we're doing this well in advance, so we're prepared. And also the world's probably going to be a lot different a year from now. And so we want to make sure that we also can be nimble and adjust course or sort of tweak, you know, our recommendations as we get closer to that session. So I think it's a great idea, but just want us to be thinking about those three things.
Member Braxton, for the record. And so what I hear is that there is a general consensus that, yes, we should move forward with developing this subcommittee. But I also hear that there is an opportunity to have a discussion on refining the scope and deliverables for the subcommittee. So I'd like to do something first. I'd like to provide this in steps, right? So I'm going to motion to that we develop I'm going to motion that the State Board of Education develop a subcommittee to develop a policy agenda to guide its engagement with the legislature.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I want to acknowledge that Member Orr has had her hand up. So during this discussion period on the motion, Member Orr, do you want to jump in or are you okay for right now? I can't hear you, but I think you said you're okay right now. Okay. So with that, we will, any other discussion? Okay. All in favor of forming a subcommittee, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, no, we have passed the motion to form a subcommittee for legislative agenda. Excellent work, team. We'll move into step 2. Member Braxton, would you like to move on to, I believe, what was your second
Sure.
piece?
Thank you very much.
And then we'll go to Member Orr. We'll go back to Member Orr.
Well, to Member Hughes' question, what is our purpose? And I believe that the top two items of purpose is establishing relevance and then representation. We can interchange those two, but those are the two responsibilities that I see with this subcommittee, establishing relevance and representation. And so with that, you know, I believe that there is an opportunity for the subcommittee to, as I mentioned before, refine the scope and deliverables for the subcommittee. And that includes setting the timing, deciding and considering agencies to include. It was mentioned doing this in collaboration with the Nevada Department of Education, and there may be more. And so I have a question about how soon can this subcommittee begin?
That would be up to the subcommittee and how quickly they can coordinate and schedule that according to open meeting law with the department.
So, Member Braxton, for the record, so then our next step would be to determine who would serve on the subcommittee. correct?
Yes, that will be part of this conversation and a potential next step. And I want to go to member Orr before we get too far along so that she can share what she's been waiting to share.
Thank you. This is member Orr. It's nothing new. I do echo the thoughts of many of you. I believe that the ideas of representation and relevance are really important, Member Braxton, and I do agree with Member Hughes on the need to really narrow our focus. So if we want to have that level of relevance and representation, we need to have such a laser focus on our goal, or a few goals, that when any, bill comes to pass or people are discussing it, they know to contact us and to work with us because those are goals that we share. So I think that just is really, really important. And I hope that the first meeting of the committee will occur soon, but after our new superintendent is in place at the end of the month, because I think that his participation will be absolutely vital.
Thank you, Member Orr. I think that speaks to what Member Else had mentioned as well, focusing on a few things, not trying to solve everything during a legislative session. Okay, anybody else have any thoughts or anybody want to volunteer to serve on the subcommittee?
Member Braxton, for the record, I'd like to serve.
Do I hear that the whole board
I'll
wants
go.
to serve?
I mean,
Sorry, everybody jumped in at once, which is great. We have a lot of enthusiasm. I hear Member Ford, Member Hudson, Member Braxton.
I'd be happy to serve unless we have too many.
Okay, and then Member Dawson Owens. I do think that might be too many because you're all voting members. So we appreciate your volunteering. We will have Member Braxton, Member Hudson. Member Hudson stands down. We will have Member Ford, Member Braxton, and Member Dawson Owens on our State Board Legislative Agenda Policy Subcommittee. Beautiful.
Can I listen in though?
You may listen in. Any board member can listen in as well as the public because they are public meetings, yes.
I could participate as an
question.
individual.
yeah, just
Right.
like I'm gonna
Yeah.
be in
Okay.
Okay. Member Dawson Owens.
I'm wondering if it would be appropriate if we might schedule a first meeting in December after special sessions should be hopefully done and over. Would that be appropriate?
That sounds appropriate to me, yes. I have a question for the DAG. Do we need to vote on the composition of the subcommittee now that we have our 3 volunteers?
Dag Cloward, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that. The question, can you repeat the question?
Yes, we have identified our 3 volunteers to serve on the subcommittee, and I'm just questioning if we should take a vote to confirm their participation.
Yes, I think that would be a good idea.
Okay, so we had Member Ford, Member Braxton, and Member Dawson Owens raise their hands. So I'll make a motion for the 3 of them to serve as our subcommittee. May I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, second by Member Ford. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we have a subcommittee. Very good. Now, if we want to discuss and then take a vote on the charge, we heard be laser focused on the content and defining what we're solving for, establish a regular meeting calendar to begin after special session in December. As a recommendation, determine the level of engagement of the board in promoting the legislative agenda, scope of deliverables and outcomes, the request to coordinate with other entities and stakeholder groups, and to maintain flexibility. Okay, if that sounds like a reasonable charge, I will accept a motion for such.
I move to approve the role and scope of the subcommittee, State Board Legislative Policy Subcommittee to be as was just presented by Board President Dockweiler.
Member Hudson, second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, seeing none. So moved. So we have our committee and the charge. With that, I believe that closes out this agenda item, and we look forward to learning more from the subcommittee as it moves forward and receiving regular updates as we normally do under the president's report as the work progresses. All right. Moving on to agenda item 9. This is information and discussion relative to representation of the board on the WestEd Board of Directors. So a little additional information about this. The Nevada representatives have typically included the state superintendent. So seeing as how we're in a bit of a flux at the moment, I would like to push this item to the November meeting so that we can have this conversation with the next state superintendent. Okay.
Do we motion to table?
So
Member
we
Braxton, for
will
the
take
record.
a motion
Yes, so I
to
motion.
push this.
I motion to table the item 9, information and discussion on WestEd Board of Directors update for November.
Thank you, Member Braxton. Is there a second?
Member Hudson, second.
Thank you. May I have all in favor? I have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstentions? All right, so moved. Now we will move on to agenda item 10, public comment 2. And this is for non-agenda items within the board's jurisdiction. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes, and time will be monitored by Vice President Hughes. Written public comments may also be submitted to the board secretary at nvboarded@doe.nv.gov. Our secretary will read written public comments into the record with a time limit of 3 minutes. If the comments exceed 3 minutes in length, the full text will be entered into the record and circulated to the board. Please note that public comments submitted after the board has officially adjourned will not be included in the record. I will begin with any members of the public who have attended to provide comments in person. Please fill out a comment card, be sure to turn on the microphone, and begin by stating your name for the record. And again, we will limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will first take public comment in Carson City, and then Las Vegas, and then we'll go to online. Any public comments in Carson City?
Madam Chair, there are no public comments in Carson City at this time.
All right, thank you. We have a couple in person in Las Vegas. Thank you. First, we have Aaron Phillips. So please come up to the podium, make sure the green light is on, and you've got 3 minutes.
Good morning. President Dockweiler, members of the State Board of Education, and Superintendent Cannavaro. My name is Aaron Phillips. I serve as the CEO of Power to Parent, Nevada's leading parental rights organization. I'm here today on behalf of thousands of parents and Nevada families who expect our schools to be safe places and where teachers model professionalism, respect, and integrity. Recently, several Clark County School District teachers used social media to glorify the assassination of a public figure. While Superintendent Ebert took swift action to remove these individuals from classrooms, that action must not end there. Parents across Nevada are watching closely and asking for accountability that goes beyond temporary removal. Educators who promote or condone violence have no place in our classrooms, and their behavior violates both district policy as well as excuse me, I lost my place, as well as state law. Under CCSD Regulation 4100, employees are prohibited from using electronic communications that can reasonably be construed as harassing, threatening, or bullying. These posts are clearly crossing that line. More importantly, under Nevada law, the state board has the clear authority and responsibility to act. NRS 391.330 allows the board to suspend or revoke a license for immoral or unprofessional conduct or evident unfitness for service. NRS 391.750 further provides grounds for dismissal for immorality, gross misconduct, or willful neglect of duty. When an educator publicly glorifies violence, it meets those definitions precisely. This is not political speech. It is conduct that threatens the moral, physical safety of our students and undermines public trust in the education system. Our children deserve to look up to their teachers as role models. When that trust is broken, it damages the entire profession and the communities that our schools serve. That is why I'm respectfully asking this board to place on your next meeting agenda an item for discussion and possible action regarding the revocation of licenses for any educator who engages in or promotes violence. I also ask that you issue a clear guidance to all Nevada school districts reaffirming that this conduct is unacceptable and will be subject to state-level license review. Nevada families want to see consistency, transparency, and courage in our children's education and in the people who serve our children. Upholding the law and enforcing professional standards is not just your authority, but it is your duty. Thank you for your time and your service and your commitment to protecting Nevada students.
Thank you, Mrs. Phillips. Next, we have Anna Binder.
Thank you, Madam President. I actually wasn't sure I was going to make it today, so I emailed it in. So for whoever has that in queue, I'll just read it myself. So good morning, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent. There's a coordinated attempt by a group of individuals to pressure this board into revoking the licenses of a few Nevada educators. These individuals are not here because they care about improving public education. They are here to weaponize the public comment process to advance a culture war. Let's be honest, these are not people who show up when this board is discussing real issues like funding, literacy, or inclusion. They only appear when they can feed outrage for sport. The Nevada Department of Education and this board and local districts already have a clear established procedures for addressing employee concerns or alleged misconduct. Those processes exist to ensure fairness, due process, and accountability, not trial by social media, not mob rule, and not political theater. This board should not, under any circumstances, insert itself into personnel matters that are properly handled at the district level. To do so would set a dangerous precedent that undermines every educator's sense of safety and every district's ability to manage its own staff. Our public education system depends on our willingness to stand firm against the kind of manipulation as this board has done historically. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Binder. And our last public comment in Las Vegas is from Laura Lindstrom. Lindstrom? Press the green button.
There we go.
Don't be nervous. You're good.
Good morning. I don't know how to address everyone. This is my first time coming forth. As these most recent issues that have already been expressed that people are coming to talk about has, in my experience, this is not the first time that educators have acted in improper ways. And I don't feel like the Nevada Model Code of Ethics for teachers is being honored, especially my experience in CCSD, where I received an email from teachers who attacked me and wanted to address things with my children from 8 years ago. A bunch of educators signed a litigious letter. They signed a letter. They sent it to CCSD superintendent. This letter was intended to prevent my advocating for my children. There was stuff in this letter that said that I asked for things outside of my children's IEPs. That is nothing that any parent should not be able to do. So this conduct most recently, to me, is nothing new. It feels as though the teachers are protected over the students. I have not seen anything that shows that there was anything done, any recourse for that conduct. Part of what their retaliation was for was because I reported to the school that they were sharing pictures of foster children. And after that, I get an email that almost goes tit for tat for everything I had addressed and addressed in a reasonable time with administration. So I don't feel that educators in Nevada are following your model code of ethics. I don't feel like, because it shows in there that it's the responsibility of everyone to report a teacher who they know, an educator who they know is not following the code of ethics. I don't feel like that is being enforced, like anyone is actually making sure that that's being held to. And I have concerns, again, about what teachers have shared, how they're judging students, and how there's just more division, and a lot of this is just impacting children's access and parents' advocacy, especially when you're seeing your educator saying things that implies that if you feel this way, you're an awful person, how they felt that they were okay with how things were handled. I had a teacher outside of a school tell me, well, what did you expect with the president rounding up ICE and taking people there? I mean, like, the conduct is just reprehensible, and it's not showing anything that helps parents advocate and helps children access their education.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Your 3 minutes have been met. Thank you for speaking before us today. Okay, no other in-person comments. Have any written submissions been provided?
President Dockweiler, I have 5 public comments concerning enforcement of NRS 391.330 and NRS 391.750, revocation of educator license for promoting violence. All 5 comments express the same sentiment. If it's okay with the board and President Dockweiler, I can read one. And then I will submit the remaining 5 comments to be entered into the meeting minutes for the official record as if they were read out loud.
Yes, that will work. And please make sure to, on the record, provide us just with the names of the additional submissions.
Will do. This one was submitted by Samuel Huber. Dear members of the Nevada State Board of Education, I am writing to express a deep concern regarding reports of teachers who openly celebrated the assassination of Charlie Kirk during his recent visit to Utah Valley University. While every American enjoys the right to free speech, educators hold a unique position of public trust and responsibility. Advocating or celebrating violence, particularly political violence, undermines the values of respect, safety, and civil discourse that our education system is meant to uphold. I respectfully urge the board to investigate this matter and, where verified, to revoke the teaching license of any Nevada educators found to have publicly expressed or endorsed violent ideology. Free speech is guaranteed, but a teaching license is a privilege that carries an expectation of professionalism and moral conduct. Taking decisive action will help restore public confidence in Nevada's schools and reaffirm that violence and hate have no place in our classrooms. Thank you for your attention and for your ongoing commitment to the integrity and safety of our education system. Sincerely, Sam Huber. The remaining 5 comments submitted via email were by Tanya Atterbury, Michelle Molman, Dana Rodriguez, Deborah Earl, and Joanne Smith.
Okay, thank you for those public comments. We will now move on to agenda item 11, future agenda item request. Board members are now invited to suggest topics for future board meeting topics. They'll be reviewed by board president and super president board president and superintendent, who will determine the most appropriate format for addressing the topic, whether as a formal agenda item for discussion or action, an informational update, or a memo providing additional context and responses to any questions raised. Any members have topics they'd like to suggest at this time? I see Carson City. Please go ahead.
Thank you, President Dockweiler. This is Member Else for the record. I would just like to get everyone's thoughts or bring up the ideas when Superintendent Wakefield starts. I think it would be a really good idea for us to have another workshop day where we could talk roles, responsibilities, and goals again, just to kind of re-norm where we're at with everything. Not to create more work for everybody and put more on everyone's schedule, but I think that would be, the timing of that would be good with a new state superintendent.
Great idea. Thank you. Anybody else? Member Dawson Owens.
Member Dawson Owens, in light of what we've heard today, I would like more information about discussion about the district and state responsibilities and what's been talked about here. It's social media policy, legal ramifications for us as well as educators. And I know that can be in a formal or informal memo following up for us.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll share one item that has been repeatedly brought to me by members of the public, and that is that this board revisit the exit age for developmental delay for students receiving those special education supports. So this is an item that our board had received information on in the past, and I believe additional data was being collected. So if we could have a follow-up presentation to present that information and have us consider that item, that would be great. All right, anybody else? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 12, which is adjournment. So thank you all for your time today. Our next scheduled board meeting will take place on Wednesday, November 12th at 9 a.m. And if there are no other questions, all right, this meeting is adjourned at 10:33.